We can bring in Jim Barker now if you'd like. Kirk in Toronto writes in. He says, Rod, who can have more fun than us at tomorrow's East semifinal with an expected season-high playoff crowd on a glorious sunny 10-degree day? The flask is full. The veins bleed. Double blue. Go train tickets at the ready. Pull together scullers. Hey, Jim, it's that time of year. How excited are you for the doubleheader on Saturday?
Oh, very much so. It's, in the first game, we've got two quarterbacks both trying to establish themselves. You don't become a quality quarterback in this league until you win playoff games, and neither one has won a playoff game. So Chad went in the one Grey Cup game, but the game he started, they didn't win. So both of these, Drew Brown, his first playoff start. This is where you establish yourself as either a star or another player. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch both of those guys. I worry a bit about Ottawa's run game. They're playing Braylon Anderson at running back. They've taken LeBourne off the roster. And I just worry about Braylon carrying the load to keep, the pass rush. Toronto's number one in the league in sacks. To keep that pass rush off of Drew Brown, I'm just not sure Braylon Addison can do that. I think Braylon's a great player, just not sure that that's a role that suits him well. So that'll be interesting to see how they run the ball. I'm sure they're going to do a lot of sweeps, and they'll use Dedman doing things like that as he's back and trying to get things on the perimeter. But they've got to slow that pass rush down. They're starting 5 Canadians on the offensive line in Ottawa, which isn't normal for them. Dino Boyd got hurt. He's still out. Drake Centers, they tried last week or 2 weeks ago. Didn't pan out. So they're going to move Jacob Ruby back into left tackle. And I think that's a fascinating matchup, that all-Canadian offensive line against the Toronto formidable defensive front. So me, Rod, I always think it comes down to physicality. And the Argonaut offensive line and Kadeem Carey against Ottawa's defensive front, and then Ottawa's offensive line and Braylon Addison against Toronto's. I just think Toronto has too big of an advantage in the trenches for Ottawa to overcome.
Then I don't need to even ask you a prediction. You pretty much just said it. What about in the West?
And I'm gonna use the same thing. Until BC shows me that they are physical enough to beat a physical football team, I'm going to take Saskatchewan. I believe that in the game that they won convincingly in a big game, that they physically handled BC. I think BC the last 2 years have run into the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and got out physical. Then they went out and said, we're going to get William Stanback, and we're going to be able to physically hang with any of the teams in this league. Of course, Winnipeg being the one that they need to get by. They haven't shown a propensity to be able to use Stanback the way they need to, I don't think, toward the end of the season. So they need to utilize him to keep the pressure off of VA. Now, VA, this team became a different team with him under center. I mean, I think you can look back and say maybe Rick Campbell made a mistake when VA was healthy, staying with Nathan Rourke. Vernon Adams is the guy who spent the offseason, flew guys in to work out. He was the leader of that team. He was on an MOP pace, and I think it showed in how that entire football team played in that last game. They were good on offense. They were good on defense. They were good on special teams. They played with a little bounce in their step. And again, is that because they had VA back there? I think that had something to do with it. So, again, will they physically be able to hang with Saskatchewan? I think Saskatchewan is one of the more physical. I think Corey Mace built it that way. He went out and got A.J. Ouellette for a reason, a mentality he wanted to develop.
Yep.
That when we need 4 yards, we're going to run it right at you and we're going to get it. And the offensive line, they're playing 3 Americans on the offensive line. And then Logan Ferland, I voted for him for outstanding Canadian or outstanding offensive lineman in the league. I think he had an outstanding year, playing different positions, which isn't easy. They had guys in and out of the lineup, but Logan Ferland was the one guy that was consistent there. So again, I think that they've got a physical mentality that Corey has built into them. Defensively, obviously, with Lanier and Micah and Thurman and Milligan, they're going to be physical.
I'm going to draw on your experience here, ask you about it as a 5-time Grey Cup champion. This business of having Vernon Adams starting, being in MOP form, but then bringing in Nathan Rourke from the NFL, supplanting Vernon at number 1, and then bringing him back. History would show that's never happened before in this league, so who knows how it's going to turn out. Do you think they can recapture the magic is the question. I guess we don't know.
Well,
do you think they can?
Like I said, I think it's obvious that Rick made a mistake. And, you never know. Hindsight's always 20/20. When Vernon wasn't healthy when Nathan came back. So for him to play was exactly the right thing. But when when Vernon Adams got healthy, at that point, he could have, Nathan Rourke hadn't lit it up. He could have gone back to Vernon Adams. And I think he misread the room, and I think that is Vernon Adams' team. Based on how they played in that last game only, that team had a different bounce in their step. It was like, okay, this is not that Nathan's not going to be the guy, but for this year and this team, Vernon had developed that rapport that, like I say, he flew guys in to work out. He set all the things up in the offseason. This was his team. He was on an MOP pace before he got hurt. So, again, Rick had a tough decision. He chose to go with Nathan, and to his credit, Nathan didn't play real well. He went and made the change prior to the playoffs, and Vernon showed, like I say, that whole team played better. They're going to need him to play at a high level. There's no doubt about it, but they can't put it just on his shoulders. That offensive line has got to play physical. They've got to get stand back involved. Again, it's going to be great weather. It's supposed to it's going to be 10 here in Toronto, and I've heard it's going to be 2 or 3 in Saskatchewan. And plus, you put all the people that will be there in the stadium. It's going to be a warm, exciting environment there. So that's that, and that's good for BC. Because BC wants to throw it all over the yard, and in snowy, cold, frozen ball, that's tough to do. So there's a lot of things that lend itself toward BC playing really well in this game. But I always go to physicality, and I believe that the Saskatchewan Roughriders are built more for playoff football than the BC Lions, and that's why I'm picking the Saskatchewan Roughriders to win this game.
Yeah, well, in 1 week from now, we'll be previewing the division finals, and we'll see if we're right on this. It's kind of slid under the radar that Corey Mace was named the West Division Coach of the Year. Jason Ma's out of the East. They'll go head-to-head, and we'll talk about that maybe next week, because I need your take on what came out of Calgary. Heads rolled. I went along with you that I thought Dave Dickenson would have one of those roles pulled from him, but that didn't happen. He's going to remain as the coach and the GM. 3 coaches fired. The special teams coordinator, Mark Killam, defensive coordinator, Brent Monson, the D-line coach, Juwan Simpson. What is your take on how that played out in Calgary?
Well, Mark Killam, he was hired back in 2005 when I just got the job as the GM. We brought brand new people in, and Mark came from Cochrane High School, where John Frazani and Ted Heller's kids went, and he came down and was our strength coach and has grown in that role to a point that he had his name mentioned for head coaching jobs. Again, sometimes a coach he's at a place too long and he gets stale. And again, you got to remember, Dave Dickenson's brother is a special teams wizard, one of the best special teams coaches in the league. Now, do you like to see a guy get fired so that he can hire his brother? No, but again, this is Dave's team, and if he's going to feel better sometimes change for change's sake is important. I think that Chris Morris, the things he said about too much change is no good, I think that's very valid too. And they were the agent of change in Edmonton. I mean, they were turning that roster over. I mean, I keep up on rosters. I couldn't even keep up with it. So I think that he's got the right idea. It's going to be very interesting to see what transpires there with how they handle the GM job and the head coaching job and then the quarterback position. Because all these have the quarterback position in play, all these jobs of guys who didn't make the playoffs. So, again, the Calgary thing surprised me. Brent Monson, quality defensive coordinator. He's going to end up somewhere in the league. I know he's got ties with Ryan Dinwiddie. Now, they have a co-coordinator situation in Toronto, and Ivan and Will Fields have done a great job. And now, if they can win themselves a Grey Cup, they can solidify that. But I think that's a logical potential spot for Brent. Again, he's a guy who's been in the league, is well respected. You know, he's a hard worker. He's one of those grinder guys that you never hear about, but he's a grinder. He's what you got to have. You know, those guys that are there at 4 a.m. and don't leave till way past dark.
Well, as you know, you were in Calgary a long time. There's a deep love for the CFL in Calgary. I have a lot of friends in my time there that they're all kind of shocked like that. You were surprised. I was surprised. Heads don't roll in Calgary, at least not in the John Huffnagel era. And the thing about it's not the John Huffnagel era anymore. And, I mean, you and I have both been around this league a long time. Like I say, don't be fooled by Dave Dickinson's, oh, shucks, Opie. He's an assassin. Mm-hmm. We saw him on the field. I don't think he's any different. Craig is a lot more, oh, shucks, Popeye. You know what I mean? They're not the same. That's the one thing about Dave. Yeah. He's a killer. I believe that.
Well, and I believe, you know, you talked about you're surprised one wasn't taken from him. What happened to me in Toronto was after my first year of being coach GM, during that second year, they basically came to me and said, you know, where do we go from here? And I made the decision to step down as one because I didn't believe to do both jobs that one person can do it. I personally just felt like, and I've done both. I've been just a head coach. I've been just a GM. And when you put those together to do those two things correctly, I don't believe you can do it. And Dave made the decision that he can. So he's put his neck on the line. And I give him a lot of credit for that. He said, I can do this. I can do both. Now, I do believe he'll bring another personnel guy in. Who it is, that's still up in the air. But I do believe he'll bring somebody in to help with the personnel side a little bit more. But again, it's a gutty move by Dave because, again, like you say, he's an assassin. He's a tough. He has been ever since he was a player. That's his nature.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of the howdy-doody in him, but that is not Dave Dickenson. And those of us that know him know that. So he's putting his head on the line and saying, I can do this. And I respect him for that.
I don't know him nearly as well as you, but I just watched him enough as a player to know that that's what he is. And the thing is, as you know, the word in the league is that they don't have the players. So whoever's going to do the personnel might be the biggest hire of them all. And by the way, when you said a while back that your favorite job in this game was being a coordinator, I kind of get it. Because I heard a story this morning about Tony Dungy when he took over as head coach for the first time. The team staff said, where do you want to stay at what hotel, coach? And he's like, why are you asking me? You're the head coach. He's like, I never thought about that. He says, right? That's... Does that sound familiar as a head coach? Yeah, it's like, I don't want those responsibilities. I just want to coach. No, it's not how it works. All right, Jim, break a leg. We'll be watching tomorrow. Talk to you in a week.
All right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you.